Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat. Today I'm really excited to be joined by the newly appointed head coach from Iowa State University, Kevin Dresser. Coach, I know you're really crazy this time of the year. I appreciate you coming on the show.
No, thanks for having me, David. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Your hiring and what's been going on up there in Ames since you've been hired has kind of been the talk of the wrestling community. I've been hoping to be able to get you on, so I'm really excited. With a lot of guys like yourself, I'm always just interested in, where you began. So if you don't mind, just tell me how you got started in wrestling.
Oh, wow. Way back then, huh? Of course, probably people know more now, but I grew up in Iowa and I had a chance to start wrestling at a young age, like a lot of Iowa kids do. I was exposed to it probably at 5 or 6 years old. Started wrestling a little bit, maybe 5, 6 weeks here and there, and obviously fell in love with the sport. By the time I got to the middle school, it was very important to me. I played a lot of sports growing up in a kind of a small town, but ultimately wrestling is what I really fell in love with, and went to high school and got the opportunity to wrestle 4 times in the state championships and placed all 4 and won it twice. So I had a really good youth experience in Humboldt, Iowa.
And when you were graduating, Iowa State were both really good then. What went into your decision-making process on where you were going to end up going to school?
Well, probably like a lot of kids, I think the fact that Iowa was recruiting me a lot harder than Iowa State at that time and Iowa was really good then. Iowa had just won my senior year. They had just won their 4th straight NCAA championship. So, having Iowa recruit me was excited, but then to have a program that was the best program in the nation at that time recruiting me. Of course, Iowa State was right behind them in 2nd or 3rd, but, and Iowa State had a really good guy at my weight, was the same age, same weight. A guy named Joe Gibbons who did really good for them, was a 4-time All-American and NCAA champ for them. So that probably was a little bit of a reason why they didn't recruit me a lot. They did recruit me some, but Iowa really kind of got out and got after me early.
Yeah, I actually went to Iowa State coming out of high school, and Jim Gibbons was the head coach, and Joe was an assistant there. And, I remember some of the battles you and Joe had. So I was lucky enough last week to have Zeke Jones on the show, and he talked a little bit about Bobby Douglas and what he meant to him and his development, and just the length and the arm, the band, almost the width of Coach Douglas's coaching tree. How many guys he's coached and went on to be coaches. And he actually mentioned, he goes, probably Coach Gable's the only guy that can compare to that. So your time there, walk us through, what did you learn from Coach Gable and that staff that helped you, both as an athlete and then later as a coach?
Well, I was there 7 years, 5 years as an athlete and 2 years as a kind of a grad assistant Hawkeye Club guy. And did various duties those 2 years. But so, I got a chance to be around there a lot. It was a great time to be there because, my senior year, we won our 9th straight NCAA championship. So I was, I think the number one thing that I'll always, now that I'm a coach, especially respect about Coach Gable as a coach was the fact of, or what a great environment he put together. I mean, we had so many, multiple-time All-Americans and multiple-time national champs and world team guys and Olympians that just trained with us daily. And so you kind of take that for granted and you think everybody's got that. But then when you walk away and go somewhere else, you're like, wow, you put that many good guys together. And then, of course, his work ethic was, thing, wasn't anything technical. Not that he didn't teach technical things. It was more of just watching him individually as just the amount of work he put in, even in his own wrestling, and he wasn't competing then. You go and you see a guy wrestle that hard, that long. It's a motivator for you in a crazy way, and especially when Coach Gable was younger and he probably didn't talk as much. He just was a guy that came in there and put his shoes on like everybody else and tore to it, and that was a great way to learn work ethic as well.
Was he a guy at that stage of his career that was still strapping the shoes on and going live with you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think he was in his late 30s. So yeah, he was still I think he was still the king of the room, to be quite honest. I saw him work over, the Bannock brothers, when they were at Iowa winning national championships. So that tells you just how tough he was, at that particular time.
Wow. Yeah, guys that ended up being Olympic champions, at 198 and 220. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Help me a little bit with my history here, Coach. Were you there when Barry Davis was there and that whole story where Coach caught him, buying groceries where he wasn't going to make weight and all that kind of stuff? Was that part of your time?
I was a year younger than Barry. I wasn't on the team that year. I was riding the bench that year. I wasn't the starter. So I was on the Barry Davis hunt that morning. We were all looking around for Barry that morning when the team had left for the Big Ten. So I can't say that I found him. Gable found him somehow, but I was on that Barry Davis hunt.
So the story, with the way we've all heard it, is it really pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, they went looking for him, and of course that was the day before cell phones and any technology, so you had to go run around from place to place. So I remember we got a phone call in our dorm room that, hey, Barry, you got to go find Barry. So it was probably 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, Gable just had happened to go into a grocery store, I think, to use a payphone. And he was walking in and Barry was walking out. And Barry had a bag full of, I think, M&Ms and Mountain Dew. And so...
Those are things to this day, two of the things I love the most.
Yeah, that's a great story. So it was all true.
Well, when we talked a little bit off air, getting ready for this, you told me, and I want you to tell the story, but how far down the depth chart you were as a freshman, and for those people that don't know, tell them how you ended up doing during your time at Iowa.
I was, let's see. I think my freshman year, my true freshman year, there were 7 guys on the ladder, and I remember I got to the final 2 spots, and Lenny Zaleski, who was a 3-time All-American in Iowa, and a couple, the senior when I was a freshman, was the number 1 guy. So getting to wrestle Lenny in the inter-squad match, getting from wherever I was in that ladder, somewhere down there by 7 to get up there, that was probably kind of, that might have been the highlight of my freshman year almost, but. So I was, there was a lot of people that wanted to be Hawkeyes back then, and there was a lot of good kids that walked on. And I remember wrestling up a couple times Illinois state champ just to get to the 3rd or 4th spot on the ladder,
Yeah.
So it was a very competitive environment. I kid that, things turned out well for me. I was a 2-time Big Ten champ and got 4th as a junior and won a national title as a senior. But the 3 years previous, of course, one of those being a redshirt year, I think I set the record for losing wrestle-offs, because,
I've been to Carver Hawkeye. I didn't see that banner up there for most wrestle-offs lost.
So that's what I tell my guys all the time now. I said, you can go from, if you come in and put your head down and work hard every day, you can go from nobody to somebody, in 1 year. And, I think that's probably the thing I had going for me, was that I wasn't in a tough room, and I wasn't the greatest wrestler when I got there. I just competed really hard every day. And so, I got better and I learned, and they did a great job of developing me. And I was around some great, grad assistants and Hawkeye Club guys that put a lot of time in with me. And, I got my time and got my chance. And, but the guys that were beating me off the team were, 3- and 4-time All-Americans too. So, but, ultimately I think that's what made me tough. I mean, I think that, a lot of kids in this day and age want to come in and be the guy for 4 years and be the guy right away. And that's nice. There's guys that can do that, but there's a lot to be said for guys that can hang in there a little bit. So I'm probably just as proud of the fact that I stayed in there when a lot of people were doubting me than anything.
Yeah, I think those guys that you're talking about are a lot of times they're the glue of your program. Those are the guys that really work hard in the room, and they'll jump up or down a weight if somebody's injured, but they bring a lot of value to the room. And it's interesting because you're kind of both. I mean, you were that guy in the beginning, and then obviously at the end, achieved the ultimate goal in college of being a national champion. So it seems like you have a lot of not only sympathy, or I mean that's not the wrong word, but you can empathize with guys at both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, and I really don't feel sorry for, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but I don't feel sorry for somebody that comes in and doesn't doesn't get that spot right away.
Right.
I think there's something to be said to be fighting for that spot. And, I know at Iowa State, we want competition. We want, you come to Iowa State, we're not recruiting one guy away. We want guys that come in and are ready to battle. And it kind of scares me when I talk to a kid and he's worried about who you're bringing in, because I can tell you I was never worried about that. I felt like the more good guys we had in the room, the better I was going to be. And so bring them on, bring all the good guys in there. But I don't know if we have that attitude across the board much anymore. I think that we need more of that, and we need that competition to push us.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of high school guys, and they'll call each other or text each other, whatever, and sometimes make sure they don't go and end up going the same weight, so that, you can be a state champion at this weight and I'll be a state champion at that weight. And it does seem like the older school mentality is like, look, I'm going to be here and you bring on whoever you want, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be the last man standing.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's, I think it's just more about, and I agree with you, I don't disagree with what you said there. I think it's more about just, preparation and being ready, because when you get to Saturday at the NCAA championships, there's no fluff left over. So you better have been through a war if you want to be the guy that's still standing on Saturday night. You better been through hell.
Yeah.
If you haven't been through hell, you're not gonna be the guy up there. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, iron sharpens iron, and you're right. Nobody lucks their way into the finals or even the All-American rounds. So after Iowa, you ended up being a high school coach out at Grundy and Christiansburg. How did a guy from Humboldt, Iowa, end up being a coach in Virginia?
Well, like I mentioned, I was coaching, I was in Iowa City training in the Hawkeye Club, and I came into the office one day. I had a note to call a guy from Grundy, Virginia. I called the number and went out and interviewed for the job. I wasn't making any money at the time, and just kind of was at a place in my life where I was ready to make some money and do something different. And it was a great move. It was one of the best things I've ever done. I got completely out of my comfort zone, didn't know anybody, didn't know how to coach at all. But I got fortunate and got hired by a great gentleman and a great organization in Grundy, Virginia. And really kind of learned how to coach a little bit there. Not that you never quit learning, but I really was forced for the first time to understand wrestling, all wrestling, not just what I was good at. So it was a great move. One of the best things I've ever done. I was there for 8 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know, and we're going to talk about the level of success you had there, but that's something that I'm always interested when I talk to you guys. Somebody always says something I just never would have anticipated. And, you said, I didn't know how to coach at all. And to me, I'm sure it's the truth. I'm sure it's an honest answer, but it seems crazy when you were in the Iowa room for 7 years, 5 as an athlete, 2 as a, grad assistant or, training Hawkeye Wrestling Club guy. You're around arguably the greatest coach of all time. When you say I didn't know how to coach at all, what do you mean when you say that?
Well, being a good wrestler and a good coach is different things. And the thing you have to understand too is even though I was drilling with guys, my last 2 years, they're kind of in a coaching role. You're drilling with some of the top level athletes in the United States. So the guys you're drilling with, they're fast, they're quick, they're strong. Most of them are. And so you're dealing with these guys, and then you go take a job at a high school and you get dealt 10 freshmen, 10 sophomores, 10 juniors, 10 seniors, all different skill levels. Obviously, they're not at the level of the kids that I was working with. So you have to figure out how to coach and what do I teach and what's going to win at this level. And you got to learn the competition. And so there's a lot to go into it. If you're in Pennsylvania, you're got to be a different level of wrestling than if you're in Virginia. So it really taught me to break down wrestling and to kind of come up with some systems and to be as efficient, because you only get the kids in high school for, you really get them 2.5 hours a day,
right,
at the most. And, in college, you get them a couple times a day. They get to go take a nap. They get a rest. In high school, you get them after they've been in school all day long, and you got to figure out how to squeeze 2 more hours out of them. So it's not as easy said as done.
Yeah, I think, I have a lot of respect for club coaches, little league coaches, high school coaches, guys. I think the best guys at that level are really teaching the, fundamentals and even higher level techniques so that when, I coached in college for a long time, and guys like you, when you get them, that a lot of the groundwork has been laid. What I find interesting is I can think of, guys like yourself, Steve Martin, Heath Esslinger. I don't know if I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but that the guys that are Division I head coaches that came from the high school ranks is pretty rare. And
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So can you talk about that a little bit about, what advantages you think you have from that, and why do you think it isn't more common?
I think my hire, and I think some of the names you mentioned, opportunity was probably the biggest thing. I mean, there's some great high school coaches out there that could definitely coach at the college level. I think, and, some of the names you mentioned that, I got hired because I probably couldn't have gotten many jobs in the nation when I got hired in 2006, but because I was really successful in the Blacksburg area, when the Virginia Tech job got opened up, I was a name that everybody was familiar with. But there's some high school coaches out there, to be quite honest, that could outcoach some of the coaches we've got in Division I programs here right now. So, I think it was the best apprenticeship I ever had. It really forced me to learn so much about, being a wrestling coach, everything from promotions to dealing with parents, to just everything. High school coach has to do it all. I mop mats, I move mats.
Yeah.
I've done wash towels. I've done it all. I've ran youth programs. I've ran middle school programs. I've run club trips. I've done everything that you can do in the sport of wrestling. I can promise you that.
Yeah, ran Little League tournaments, the whole nine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, maybe what's one or two things that you learned from the high school coaching that's helped you develop winners at the Division I level?
I think understanding, probably understanding just the whole gamut. I think, especially coming from Iowa, I just assumed when I got to high school that somebody always had the mat ready to go, and somebody always mopped the mat, and somebody taped the mat, and the uniforms were washed.
Stuff was waiting for you in your locker room. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got to, Virginia Tech's probably more of a normal college wrestling program than a lot of them. And, even at Virginia Tech, we had to do a lot of things on our own. We had to make sure the mat was ready to go for a match. I mean, crazy it was that we were in charge of lining up somebody to get the mat out there. I'm sure they don't have that problem at Iowa. But we had to learn how to, I had to learn how to do everything. So when I got to college, all those little things that contribute to making a program I understood. And, I understood, competing in the summer probably better than college coaches did. I think they all understood that, but they were probably all more in camp systems. I really had a regimented summer training for my guys when I was a high school coach. And so it was important for me to have some regimen in the summer that besides just having guys show up for camp sessions.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I coached in junior college. I think it's very much like high school, where you have to do everything. Like you said, you don't have even workout gear where you just turn it in and get your new roll the next day. So, yeah, I think starting at the bottom like that, the word apprenticeship is really interesting, and that sticks out to me. I want to get into Virginia Tech, but before I jump to that, can you give me just a quick history of your time in high school at Grundy and Christiansburg? How many state championships as a team, how many state placers, state champions, all that kind of stuff, did your athletes accomplish while you were the coach there?
Well, I was at Grundy from 88 to 96 to 1996, and that was 8 years. Like I said, they had really had a strong program when I got there. They'd already won a couple state titles. So I piggybacked. I was there 8 years, and we won 8 state titles. And probably something more that I really valued is that we had my last couple years at Grundy, we had 2 teams that were top 10 in the nation. And then I went to Christiansburg, started all over. Thought I was ready to get out of coaching. Long story short, left coaching for a little bit, came back to Iowa, got a real job, and decided to go back to coaching again. And so I started at Christiansburg, which was completely different than Grundy. No youth program, much of a youth program, and not much of a middle school program, not much of a high school program. An older gentleman that kept the program going, and so I jumped in there and took a lot of what I learned at Grundy, and we got it going. And I was there 10 years, and We finished third. No, we finished second in Virginia, I think 3 times. And then my last 5 years there, we won it. I brought in a really good assistant coach, Darrell Weber, who took it from there, and they're still winning state titles at Christiansburg. And then I got a call in 2006 after 10 years at Christiansburg at the Virginia Tech job, that they were interested in me, and I went over and they offered me the job. And obviously I just left there in March and was there for 11 seasons, or 10 3/4 seasons, and had a great, it was a great experience and a great challenge, and had a lot of fun at Virginia Tech.
Yeah. And Tony Roby's a guy who's been a friend of mine back when I coached. He was, great recruiter, worked hard. I know you guys had a very, very good, positive, mutually respectful relationship. And I had him on my podcast in the fall, and he talked about how, what the amount of team points you guys originally scored when you took over. So for people that are just kind of, maybe recent history guys and know how well Virginia Tech is doing, when you guys took over, how bad was the program?
Well, we didn't have, we had some great guys, individuals that were guys that, were the kind of guys you'd want to pal around with, but they probably didn't have the same, well, not probably, they didn't have the same kind of drive and just toughness that what needed to happen at this level to be good. So, we didn't inherit a lot of great wrestlers. Some really good guys, but not great wrestlers. So 0 points the first year, 0 points the second year. I think our third year we scored a half a point at the NCAA tournament. So it took us 3 years to win one match at the NCAA tournament. I think we qualified.
Roby was
so excited. Maybe, I think the most we'd ever qualified was 2 guys until our 4th year.
Yeah, he said you guys won one backside match that third year, and you guys were really excited about it because you were off the very bottom line of the scoring.
Yeah, first time. It took us 3 years to get out of last place.
That's pretty awesome. So what do you think started turning the tide to go from that to getting, more qualifiers and obviously more guys on the podium? What was that process like?
Well, obviously recruiting's important and the people that you bring around. I mean, hiring Tony was a great pickup for Virginia Tech, and I hired some other coaches that did a really good job for us. Nate Yetzer, we want to start David Hoffman, Kurt Backus, we had Lance Palmer for a year, Eric Morrill. We hired some guys that did a really good job in the room, and the combination of good recruiting, we recruited well and found some guys under the radar because we couldn't go after blue chip guys because they weren't gonna entertain us. So we had to go find those guys that were maybe the one, like Ty Walls was a one-time state champ,
Yeah.
Guys like Pete Yates, who was a 2-time state champ, I think, or 3-time state champ, but he's out of Georgia.
Right.
Not many people were recruiting Georgia kids. A kid like Jesse Dong, who was a 1-time state champ out of Ohio. Gerard Garnett, who was a 2-time state champ out of Delaware, Guys that weren't big-time blue chip guys, but were really good wrestlers that were just maybe a notch under the radar. And, those guys helped us.
Yeah, and you bring up a couple names. I remember watching Garnett wrestling at Virginia Beach, thinking, if this guy gets in the right program, he could be good. And I had a chance to visit Cleveland a couple weeks ago. I'm doing some things up there with the national tournament and got a chance to go see the St. Ed's room. And, a guy like Ty Walls coming out of a program like that. And, you guys helped them continue that streak of how many years they've had, a Division I All-American. It's pretty impressive. The guys, like you said, the guys that you've had, and I'm guessing it's like everybody else. So once you start getting these, it's like a chicken and the egg, it's hard to win without the best recruits. But the best recruits don't want to come till you start winning. So you kind of had to develop those guys, like you're saying. I kind of know what I think, but what are some of the highlights that you will always remember from your time at Virginia Tech?
Well, winning the first time we won the ACC tournament. The first time we won the ACC tournament was great. I remember beating Oklahoma State in a dual meet, I think our 4th or 5th year at the national duels at UNI. Beating Wisconsin. We beat Oklahoma State in the quarters and beat Wisconsin in the semis. That was some highlights. Obviously, getting in the top 10. I think 5-6 years ago, we got in the top 10. We cracked the top 10. And then last year in New York City, getting the trophy, getting top 4 in the nation. was a great way to cap it off.
And I mean, I don't just the thousands of hours and blood, sweat, and tears that went into something like that. I'm guessing that's something that'll just, those kind of moments will stay with you for the rest of your life. I mean, I see those team pictures and, I don't know you and you've been kind to me, but we're not friends or anything. And I see the smile on your face in those pictures. And, you can tell that that's the culmination of a lot of work and a lot of people believing in you guys and your process.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of people, to put together a championship program or a championship team. There's no question. A lot of people. And so, it's very gratifying. And, I like journeys and that Virginia Tech was a great journey.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to the next step. Like I said, I went to Iowa State, and I'm friends with Kevin Jackson. His brother and I were roommates when we were freshmen, and Kevin was still there. I like Kevin a lot, but I want to see Iowa State, be as good as they can. I'm supposed to be neutral in this job, but, when you went to a place that's important to you. So, kind of walk me through the hiring process at Iowa State and how hard was it to leave Virginia Tech?
Well, short answer, first, it was very hard. It was a great place. They treated me well. My kids grew up in Blacksburg, in the Blacksburg area, so it was tough. It was a really hard choice. Ultimately, the attractiveness of the tradition of the Iowa State program and just growing up in the area. And I mean, I went to my first college matches were watching Iowa State in the early 70s, wrestle Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, packed gyms or packed arenas.
Yeah.
Coliseums.
Hilton
And,
Coliseum.
so that was my,
yeah.
I mean, that was where I saw my first college match was at Hilton Coliseum, and it was packed. And so all those memories kind of came flooding back. And then, the athletic director, it starts with the guy that runs the show and just the punch list of things that he said, okay, I said, I need this. Okay, here you go. And then I said, I need this. And he said, okay, here you go. And so we just kept going down the list. I said, if I'm going to make this move, this is my last hurrah. I got to know that we're on the same page and you've got my back and I've got your back. And we really kind of had a heart to heart with what we needed to do to make this thing work. And so we're going to give it a whirl.
Yeah. And I'm not going to ask you what all the things were on that list, but, I mean, was it a thing where, there was originally some interest and then it was almost a surprise, like how much they were willing to support you? Or did you kind of from the start, did you kind of feel like this is probably going to happen?
No, I think it was just an interest at first. We were in the heart of the season, or we were get down to the end of the season. And so I got a phone call and, we started talking a little bit, and then the phone call went to another phone call, and then we want to fly out and come see you. And, we're coming to see you. We're not interviewing you. We're offering you the job. So I knew that they were getting serious when they were, when they chose to fly out to see me.
Yeah.
So,
usually when people bring contracts, they're pretty serious, right?
Yeah, right. So, the Iowa State folks flew out here and came to my house and wanted to meet my family and pulled my kids out of school. The athletic director said, can I get your kids out of school? So we got my kids out of school. And, we sat down and talked for a couple hours, just, some key people from Iowa State. He brought the football coach, and, it was a unique kind of out of the box way to offer somebody a job. And, I still at that time had a lot to think about. They didn't leave and I said, yeah, I'm taking a job. I had a lot of thinking to do. I had to get my family on my side and, really think about it because it's a big move.
Yeah. You weren't unhappy in Blacksburg at all, right, Coach?
No, absolutely not. No, great people, great everything.
So it's interesting. Like I said, these things always pop up and they're not what you anticipate. First of all, the athletic director is Jamie Conrad. Is that correct?
Jamie Pollard.
I'm sorry. Jamie Pollard. So he's the one that came out there and he pulled your kids out of school. So, I mean, basically he's recruiting you and the family. So, I'm super interested as a guy. I mean, you're normally on the other side of that. You're the one recruiting. What was it like to be recruited and to watch really your kids be recruited?
Oh, I think it's like anybody. I mean, it's flattering when somebody comes after you and goes after you hard. But once the so-called flattery or the honeymoon part of it's over. You have to sit down and look at it on paper, just like we do with recruits. Is okay. It's now what's it going to be like when I get there? When all the hugging and kissing's over with, what's it going to be like when I get there? And so that's what I ultimately had to sit down and brainstorm. And it took me a good week and a half to figure that out.
What were your kids' impressions about getting pulled out of school and that kind of thing? I mean, that's got to be unusual for them, right?
Oh, it was different. Yeah, there's no question. They were taken back a little bit. I mean, my 15-year-old son, just the idea of getting out of school was cool with him. So,
you get to skip history class. He was happy. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, you know this, and I know this, that Iowa State has had such a long history of success. How has that helped you so far in getting this thing up and running so quickly?
I think the biggest help is the fans have really got and obviously we have to deliver right now, but the fans are really kind of engaged right now and re-energized. And that's something that was big for me coming in. That's a big goal for me is to put some people in Hilton again that are really, see something that obviously we're not going to be great right away, but see something that's turning and something that's exciting to watch and get those thousands of people to show back up because they're there. It's such a really well-educated state that it's everywhere you go. People just know wrestling. It's just, it's amazing if you're a wrestler in Iowa, everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And so, getting Hilton Coliseum jumping again is something that I can close my eyes and see happen, really easy. And, look at the people that have wrestled there. I mean, you got Gable, you got Sanderson, you got Nate Carr, you got, oh my gosh, you could go on and on and on with just all of the great guys that have wrestled there. So they appreciate, they appreciate great wrestlers. So, we're just looking for that next Cale Sanderson like everybody else, but we know when we find that guy that they're going to really be treated well by our Cyclone fans.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things I think we were all watching and really wanted to see how it went was your handling of re-recruiting and maintaining the roster at Iowa State. I mean, obviously the cupboard's not bare there. And there were guys that committed and, you kept a lot of them and some of them went in a different direction. What was your mentality and approach to that situation?
We came in, a couple guys that already asked for releases and wanted releases. And, obviously I wanted to get in front of as many people as I could and just let them hear what we were going to do. But, some people had already made relationships with other college coaches and there was talking going on. So we probably didn't get to everybody we wanted to get to. But for the most part, I think we did a pretty good job of saving the day for some of the guys that had signed. And then it was a matter of just getting to know the guys in the team and getting those guys reprogrammed a little bit. And, they had relationships with the old coaching staff, good relationships because they're all good people.
Right.
And so we knew, my first meeting with the team was, I used the word bumpy a lot. If it's going to be bumpy here for a little bit, I think I even said that at the NCAA tournament when I met with the fan base. I mean, it's crazy. Iowa State, I think, scored 1 point at the Nationals, but they had over 200 people at their celebration, the post-tournament celebration in St. Louis. And that's what I said. It's going to be bumpy here for a while. It's going to be, you're going to have to get used to us and we're going to have to get used to you. And, you're going to have to trust us and we're going to do the best job we can. And, I think that's the message that, kind of transcend from the recruits to the fan base.
Were you, when you got done with it and you saw who you retained and, who you let go, were you overall, I shouldn't say were you because you can answer yes or no, but how did you feel about how it went?
I hadn't, to be quite honest, when I got hired, I hadn't really studied the recruits that they had signed. And so as soon as I got hired, I started studying them. So yeah, we lost a kid from Minnesota and Maryland that I would have liked to got, but they were out the door kind of before I got there. I had a couple conversations with the Maryland kid, not even a conversation with the Minnesota kid. His dad was already, not letting him talk and he was going somewhere else. But I knew that coming in. I knew that we weren't going to keep everybody, when you have a coaching change, you give people, everybody's all up in arms and give people a chance to go jump ship. And so, a couple of them, I think if they were, they really probably weren't as sold on Iowa State as some of the ones that did stay. So, ultimately I want people to want to be here.
Yeah.
So I wasn't on my hands and knees, let me tell you. If you don't want to be here and you're kind of thinking you maybe don't want to be here, then guess what? I don't want you here. If you don't want to be here and you're not excited coming through the door, and, I think we've got maybe one or two guys that are probably still in that boat, to be quite honest. And, my message to anybody is, and I think we had a great summer with our guys, but, you got to come in the door wanting to be here and excited and trust the leadership. I can tell you going to the University of Iowa, not one day did I walk in that room thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not sure about this. I was all in, both feet, even some things I didn't like to hear and some weaknesses pointed out. I swallowed my pride and got in there and went forward and corrected them. And that's what we've got to do. And we got to continue to do that. But for the most part, it's been very good. Yeah,
I hope I didn't imply I thought you would ever have been on your hands and knees begging guys. That's the last thing that ever would have crossed my mind with the limited amount that I know you. So, what are the short and long-term goals that you have for the program, Coach? And, do you have a timeline in mind? I mean, obviously it's to ultimately win a national title, but do you have sort of some mile markers between here and there that you're trying to accomplish?
No, I'm not, I'm not one to make predictions. A lot of factors, recruiting fall into that. I say you got to be good. If you want to get in the podium as an individual, you got to be really good. You've got to have a little bit of luck on your side sometimes when you're young, and you got to be healthy. And so we've got to, the same thing goes. If we want to be good as a team, we've got to get good. And so that means we've got to develop guys in the room, and we got to recruit well and we got to develop kids. That's the secret right there. And I don't have a timeline for that. Obviously we want to win. I didn't take this job to get second place. I want to try to win a national title before they put me in the ground. And I think I've got a great support cast of people because it's not Kevin Dresser. It's Mike Zadek. It's Brent Metcalf. It's Derek St. John. It's Jamie Pollard. It's people in our academic support. It's people in our video. It's my director of operations. It's it's the fans, it's the donors. It's to win a national championship, you got to have a army of people all pulling in the same direction. That's my job. My job is to keep building the army. Yeah,
for sure. And, you actually kind of led me into what I was going to ask next, that you quickly established a really unbelievable coaching staff with Mike Zadek, Derek St. John, Brett Metcalf. And you've coached next to, at least two of those guys I know. Tell me what each of those guys bring to the program from your point of view.
Mike is really special. He brings a genuine love for his athletes, no matter if you're the 35th best guy on the team or you're the first best guy on the team. His consistency and the way he works with guys, his consistency in terms of the expectations of what he expects out of the first toughest guy on the team and the 35th guy is impressive. It impressed me right away. Derek's very straight shooting. You get what you see, tough as heck, loves to teach wrestling. Has probably, because he's the youngest, has improved, more than any Mike or myself in terms of coaching because he started out young. And he's only been doing this about 3 or 4 years, but, I've seen him individually put his hands on a couple guys and put him on the podium himself while he was at Virginia Tech in 2 years. Brent, I'm getting to know. I love, obviously, his toughness and his well documented, but what I've seen just in 3 months is his, just kind of a normal guy away from the room and brings an energy and he's a really positive guy all the time. He's super upbeat. He's kind of that Energizer bunny guy, but he's also can just be, Brent Metcalf and throw you down and call you out and tear your head off if he needs to, So, but just a really good demeanor. And so, I'm blessed. I'm blessed with what I've got.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're blessed, but you made that happen. So it seemed to me from the outside looking in that you I want to say either understand or really are stressing the importance of having a regional training center there and having a prominent regional training center there. I'm friends, Willie Gadsden was a really good friend of mine and one of my mentors. So I'm friends with Kyvan, and I saw that, he's recently, is an RTC athlete there. What do you, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you see as the role of an RTC in general, and how do you specifically see it helping Iowa State wrestling?
Well, I think if you want to compete at the highest level, you better have a pretty good RTC anymore. Look at the schools that are winning and look at the amount of postgraduate guys they've got in the room. And those postgraduate guys serve two purposes. It's great for recruiting because the best high school kids want to train with the best kids in the nation. And then also the best high school kids want to be able to go to a school where they can reach their NCAA Division I college goals, and they also want to go to a school where a lot of them want to go to school where they can reach their international Olympic goals. So what we're putting together at Ames is probably what some other people are trying to put together, but we want to put the best one-stop shop available that we can, and that's the importance of the RTC and why we're growing it, and why we're continuing to grow it, and why we're hiring guys and hiring more guys, and we've got a plan to it, and ultimately we want to get, we'd like to have 10 to 12 guys in the RTC. We've got 3 right now, 3 paid guys, and but it's like everything else. It's building. We just don't go out and buy 10 guys, 10 guys. We got to have the right kind of guys in there, and if we don't, we'll get rid of them. But that's the goal.
Yeah, and the RTCs are interesting. I mean, I'm friends with Mark Jr. and friends with Coach Guerrero, and those guys have made the jumps to those spots respectively in Iowa and Oklahoma, and it is pretty clear that you're mentioning the top programs right now and their RTCs. It's undeniable that those are connected. I had asked you privately if it was okay to ask you about this, so, and you were kind enough to say yeah. So your salary is obviously public information, as well as the salaries of your assistant and RTC coaches. And Iowa State's obviously committed to success financially. How do you feel like your coaching salary and that of your staff is going to impact NCAA wrestling as a whole? And do you have any concerns at all about their haves versus have-nots situation being created?
Well, I don't think, to answer your last question first, the haves and the have-nots, I think to a certain degree happen all the time in all sports. I don't think Alabama has the same. I think Alabama probably has more resources in terms of staff, and if you dig deep, then probably the average Division I football school. So I think that's always going to be the haves and the have-nots. I hope what this did was, and I see it happening already, was I hope that by Jamie Pollard stepping up and really investing in wrestling, that other people will do that. And I've seen that already at the RTC level. I think we lit a powder keg, and people, Iowa State definitely got people's attention. I don't think there's any denying that. I think it's good. I think we work our butts off as coaches, and so
sure.
I'm not embarrassed to go out and go for big salaries, and I know, and we shouldn't. And I think, athletic directors are starting to note that, hey, if we want to compete, we got to invest in this sport, and so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I told Jamie, I said I want to make sure we pay our coaches a lot because they're good, number one, and I don't want nobody to steal them, number two. And so we put the.
I like the second one a lot, Coach.
Yeah, so we put the bar up there high. So if you want to come get them, you're going to have to pay each one of them $1 million a year. How's that sound, right?
Well, if any of them are unhappy, let me know. I'd be happy to step in. Yeah. Well, it's awesome. I mean, I can tell that, you look at this not just from the pure wrestling point of view, but, building the program and involving the community and understanding the business part of it too. There's really no good segue to this next question, but ever since this happened, I've wanted to ask you about it. A couple years ago when Virginia Tech was supposed to wrestle Iowa in the national duels and it didn't happen, and your oranges comment came out, I'd really like to know, what are your memories of that? Why do you think the duel didn't happen? And how much do you think that comment, may have changed people's, raised your profile and, maybe created more eyes on Virginia Tech program as a whole?
Well, that was first and foremost probably a knee-jerk reaction that got me in trouble a little bit because but I think what it shows is that I am a fiery, passionate guy, and so if you're gonna hoodoo me, if you're gonna maybe screw me, and that might be too harsh of a word, but there was a lot of monkey business going on, and so I probably overreacted a little bit, but that's where we come from, and I think there's a lot of my peers out there would be the same way that would. If you just basically calling somebody out or calling maybe the system out, and it wasn't one individual, that it was probably a combination of things that made that thing such a hot topic. Did it help Virginia Tech? I don't know if it helped Virginia Tech. My ED at Virginia Tech didn't think it helped very good because he called me into his office, chewed me out for it. So I don't know if it helped him any, but it definitely got us out there that we weren't afraid to go wrestle anybody anywhere at any time. And I think it was a huge motivator for my team at Nationals. I think we as a coaching staff did a good job of putting a little bit of a chip on our shoulder when we went into New York City. And I think we wrestled like it. Like, you guys, we got put in the back burner, and we're going to show you we're not in the back burner. So, however, in this coaching world, you got to figure out angles sometimes to rally the troops. And I'm not saying that was our number one battle cry back then, but our guys felt like they were maybe hoodooed a little bit.
Yeah, a little disrespect, that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, and obviously now you're going to get to duel those guys every year. So, I mean, how do you feel about that? I have to imagine that once you get this program up and running, it's got to be one of those dates that you really circle on the calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I respect the heck out of what's going on in Iowa City. There's only a few programs in the nation that are the gold standard. And if you're competing with Iowa and Tom and Terry Brands, you're doing a great job because those guys got it going on. They know what the heck's going on. They're fiery little dudes and they're always going to put a good product out there, a tough product. And that's what we got to get to, and then in the real gold standard is those Nittany Lions. And that's who everybody's shooting for. But yeah, in state and being an Iowa thing, that Iowa State dual meet's always going to be a circled event for the Iowa folks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it'd be great for the sport of wrestling and great for the sport of wrestling in Iowa if that duel becomes one where you don't know who's going to win, and there's a bunch of top 10, top 5 matchups, in multiple weight classes. So.
Right.
Coach, I really appreciate your time. And what else? Is there anything else you'd like the listeners to know about Iowa State, about the future? Anything that I didn't do a good job of asking you about that you'd like to let the audience know about?
Nope. Just buy your season tickets. Buy your season tickets, $85. We got a lot of home matches this year, so buy your season tickets. If you're excited to donate to a good cause, the Cyclone Regional Training Center is a great cause for those Iowa State fans that haven't heard about it. So I'm plugging my two entities right there. But we just started selling season tickets, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I heard they're going great. So just excited to get.
Yeah, let's walk through that. Who's on your schedule, and how do people buy tickets?
I guess you just go to the Iowa State. It's terrible. I don't know exactly the Iowa State Athletics website. I'm sure if you just Google that, you can find Iowa State Wrestling. You can buy season tickets.
Okay.
We don't have. We're home 7 or 8 times this year. Obviously, Iowa at home, Oregon State, Drexel's coming in, former Iowa State guy, Azevedo coaches there.
Yeah.
Some schools that are in our Big 12, like Northern Colorado, Wyoming. So it's a little different schedule. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are away. North Dakota State, South Dakota State are away. We're going to go to Vegas. We're going to go to Virginia duels. So we're excited. We get a good dose of everybody. Not a lot of Big Ten teams, but it's hard to get Big Ten teams on your schedule because they're so tied up with their Big Ten schedule. It's really hard for them to get out and do much.
Yeah, well, you'll see those guys at those other tournaments you spoke about. So as far as people that want to be involved with the Cyclone Regional Training Center, I assume if they just Google that, there's probably a website with the
CycloneRTC.org. Yep, CycloneRTC.org. and you can learn more about our athletes, our coaches, how you can contribute. Good site, up and running, brand new.
It's got your fingerprints all over it, I'm sure, Coach. So
it's got my administrative assistant, Robin Wilson's fingerprints all over it. So, yeah.
So indirectly yours, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Coach, I really appreciate the time today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last week, trying to get this scheduled. And, I really wish you and your coaching staff and your athletes the best of luck this season.
All right. I appreciate you, David. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the head coach of Iowa State University, Kevin Dresser. This is David Mirikitani with Matt Chat. We'll speak to you next week.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.